Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, and good evening to everyone at Motherhood Club. Myself, Ekta Sehgal, founder and chief strategy officer of Motherhood Club, have come back to meet you all after a long gap. What was I doing all this while? Well, I was trying to pursue a passion which involved a lot of emotions, which is theatre, a play at my daughter's school. And I had a chance to bump into my fellow co star, Rohini Roy Bhadra. She is an international lawyer, but more than that, I think she's one person who is full of passion and believes that life needs to be lived king size, or I would say queen size. She is an accomplished international lawyer with a lot of accolades to her credit, a guest speaker at multiple setups, be it an organization or a country. But like I said, she believes in pursuing her passion. A pianist, a dancer, a theater artist, and a lot more. And above all, a mother, which in itself is an extremely passionate job that each one of us does. And I'm sure there is a lot which is there in her kitty, which she herself can share. But let me also tell you that she has been felicitated by World Economic Forum and is considered to be a thought leader and also guides and mentors many legal aspects for the government of India. So, Rohini, a warm welcome at Motherhood Club. And I'm so glad that the short association that we have has actually culminated into a strong bond that we hold today.
Absolutely, likewise, Ekta. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a very, very special moment because I've never really done, a talk show with someone, so close to me. But thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
Wonderful. So, like I said, that Rohini and I met at my daughter's school. She's a fellow parent and a theater artist. That's the common love that both of us have. And we both actually were rivals in the play, just to give you a background. But who says that a chemistry cannot be built between two women rivals? And believe you me, the chemistry was amazing. We did have a few members of ours who had witnessed that at the school that our kids go. But we'll talk about that a little later. And I'm going to request Rohini to introduce herself a little more in detail so that our audience, our viewers would know who actually Rohini Roy is.
Right. That's always a difficult introduction. But yes, there's not very much to really introduce about myself, Ekta. I was sort of born and raised, in under very queer circumstances. I've always been on the move all my life. Um, I started out really early with fine arts, so my profession is actually a bit of a surprise to me as well because I've always been very heavily involved in fine arts, be it music, be it dance, be it art. I think it's something about also the side from which my ancestry belongs, because Bengal is usually associated with a lot of fine arts and culinary, and they want to see that in each of their women. So I think the exposure to fine arts is primarily that. But it started as early as I think 4 years of age. I was only four when I started to learn music.
Wow.
So that happened very early on in life. And of course, life took many, many different turns. And I discovered that, in school, I had varied interests, right from dramatics to the fine arts to music to inter-school competitions to debates. And I discovered that, I managed to be quite okay with most of that, if not academics. So it really started there for me. And I discovered that I had a love for logic somewhere in between grade seven and eight. The love for logic was such that I think from a very young age, I really could not see any injustice, happen systemically, whether it was just in the arena of school or whether it was outside. I felt very passionately for a lot of causes around school, which sort of led me to think that, is there a profession that really can make me work beyond a book and beyond a degree, where I could see and delve further inside society and help raise someone else. Maybe it's partly because of my zodiac. I think Leos have that streak in them, they always want to be of some value to someone else beyond them. So for me, putting a smile, onto someone else's face was always a very important aspect in whatever I did. So I think that led me to law. I'm one of those few people who chose law actively, and not because lot of others think that it's because of a family tradition. Not, I don't have a single lawyer in my maternal family. So it has been quite a journey, and with that came the pursuit of fine arts. I believe my mother was very keen that I finished a certain degree. She didn't want me to be the jack of all trades and the master of none. She said everything, you have to do everything well. That put an immense amount of pressure, but I think by class 9 I had actually finished my diploma in Western classical music. And the reasoning is laughable, because she said the reasoning is, you'll have your boards next year, there won't be time, so this is the only time you can finish. So I was literally made to finish fine arts before my board years, and that turned out well, because I actually started teaching music very early. I was
Wow.
barely in, and I taught music not because you would think that maybe I had a really important and deep love and affection and passion, but actually not. My reasons for teaching music that early is because my first boyfriend was a Britishman, and he left for England, so I had to support doing ISD calls to him. So I decided, let me go earn, because my mum was not willing to pay. So that is how music initially started on, at least in terms of a mini profession, side by side from school. I remember going away from school, driving across to a music lesson, teaching, and coming back. Until, of course, I passed out and I decided that, law is what I wanted to do eventually. So thereafter, it was a long sojourn with lots of law schools and lots of degrees, and music got lost somewhere in between. And then, of course, I had a very, very early marriage, very early children. So that's where I am. That's who I am. I think, to sum it up, I'm a very deeply passionate person. I love doing what I do, with an equal level of commitment. That also is actually a problem, because I never really think it's possible to achieve everything, equally perfectly. But I'm very passionate about most things that I do.
Yes, and I couldn't agree more on that, because I have seen that firsthand. And it's very interesting that, I'm glad actually, rather, that your mom introduced you to music. Else it would have been very difficult to, cope up with those ISTV calls and foot the bill and ask your mom to pay for you on the lighter side. And here we have a comment from Ela. She's saying that she loves your candidness, and it's such a pleasure to hear such an honest talk. Agreed,
Oh,
Ela, absolutely, to talk about this, especially talk about your past, and more about boyfriends when you're married and you have kids. That's wonderful. So, Rohini, you mentioned that, there was so much of pressure by your mom about music, and you finished it and then you did all those things. But you've lived most of the early years outside India, if I remember it right, right?
that's right.
And now you are practicing international law, and you are based in the country, though you get to travel a lot. How easy or difficult was it for you to adapt to the Indian culture, though culture is in your roots? And as rightly said, that, in the eastern part of the country, especially in Bengal, culture is very, very deep rooted. So, how easy was it to transit from, from the Western world back to the country, getting married early in life, having kids early in life? How was that journey?
You've asked me a very difficult and very emotional question, and something that I've not come across in a lot of the other interviews that I've taken. So first of all, thank you for that. I think it's a chord which a lot of people forget to touch. That transition can never be easy. It's never easy for a little girl of a teenager to come, accept a different surrounding, have an accented speech, or a different, slightly different value system. You're open to an open society, and then suddenly you come into a very traditional society, where a lot of things that you were used to being okay with, is just not there. So simple things like, in the West, kissing on the street is really no big deal. You grow up with it and you grow comfortable with it. Looking at a scene in a movie is really not difficult. It's not taboo. so many subjects of women's, menstrual health or other things. They're not considered, out of the ordinary. But this system was different. It had a very beautiful emotional connect with society. To get used to that, meant a lot of being alone in school. I remember, I think I grew up with very few friends who really identified with me. Probably just one now, if I can remember. But it was difficult because you were made fun of, you were often jeered at and laughed at. And then, of course, the system is different. We're even educationally, we are a system which thrives on, rote learning, which is just absolutely not there in a lot of international curriculums. So getting used to four subjects of social sciences was a nightmare. I mean, I think it was one of the most difficult phases for me and everybody else, actually, but especially for me, getting used to Hindi as a second language, for example, for the limited time that it was. And then, actually appearing for a board exam in the subject, it was very difficult academically. And I'm not someone who had a lot of support at home because my mum, as a single parent, she raised me absolutely alone in Delhi. And for her, it was really difficult because she was the only earning member of the family at that point of time. So everything was alone. So this was difficult. The socio-emotional transition from one place to another, growing up and being alone and trying to thrive in that loneliness was very difficult. And I don't remember us having a lot of expression, at that point of time. There was no one to really communicate to. So even if you felt bad, whether it was school or whether it was family, there was no one to really connect to. So those things were really difficult.
I also feel and believe that, whatever we experience during our growing years, that actually shapes us and makes a better person. The good, the bad, the ugly, whatever experiences that we have, I think it actually helps us create something very beautiful for us. And that's what I see in you, that, after being through those challenges that you have, and being brought up by a single parent is not an easy task by no stretch of imagination. And here today you're a mother of three kids, right?
No,
So the
right.
so the transition from a young girl, you know who was very passionate about everything and chose her career, uh, basis the fact that you wanted to bring a smile on people's face, which is very rare because that's not the image that mostly people have about lawyers. Sorry, lawyers, if your other lawyers are hearing me right now, but you became a lawyer. It's a very demanding job, right? And especially international law, where you've been traveling extensively, you go for cases all over the world. How do you balance being a mom and being a professional? Forget the passion, I'm going to bring that in later. But, with one kid, it takes a lot. You have three kids. You're a accomplished lawyer with, like I said, with a lot of accolades to your credit. You are involved in a lot of uh, thought processes about changing the legal system. How do you balance it?
Again, no straight answers. Very difficult question. But I think that for me, I've never really chased an ideal balance. I think it's very utopian and idealistic to think that a woman can balance everything in life, and it has been very, very challenging. I can't understate it. Also, because as you rightly mentioned, and I love that observation which you just said, that somebody who's grown up with circumstances where things have not really been always on a silver platter. Our circumstances really shape us. So for me, what were my priorities at 26 when I got married? I think my first priority was I'm never going to leave my children alone. Actually, no, the first priority was I'm never going to have just one child because I grew up alone and I wanted to have, people who could be there for my kids, and that they are a group on their own. And they didn't, because I missed that. I was very lonely. Didn't have a single friend, didn't have a sibling. So that was my first priority. I always wanted two. Three was just, well, anyway. But my second priority was actually not to leave them alone because I think that kids really they really crave for the mother's attention at a certain phase of their lives. Then came work. Now I think after turning 40, I'm not sure, whether which priority was more up on the list. I think when I look back, maybe my career was a little above the children at one point of time when I didn't already have them. So I felt, I mean, I've done a lot of work and a lot of study, spent a lot of time training myself as a lawyer. And I didn't want that to come to a complete stop, at a certain point in life where I couldn't focus on career. So I wanted to balance both in a way that I was successful in both. I didn't want to be a failed parent either. So that was, a very, very uphill task, which I took on very early on in life. And my first child was actually born at 26, and I was at the literally the beginning of my career in law at that point of time. So balancing it has always been difficult. I don't even think that I balance it completely well even now. And because I'm very, very interested that the children get my time equally, things are just that much more difficult. I remember, for example, when I breastfed my children, I had to carry them with me to Greece for my international hearings. So my husband would actually be carrying the three of them on his lap. And I would be feeding him in between my court intervals. My son used to come in a little basket in the car, and I had to feed him in between my hearings. So all my friends, even when I was pregnant, I think, I remember during my second child, I was actually in Paris for a very important arbitration. And I used to walk for miles with the baby in my tummy, and I was already 7 months plus. So I've always taken a lot of risks. I've been very adventurous, very gutsy, because I never really wanted to look back and ever say that, oh, my children stopped me from my success. I never wanted to have that regret. So I wanted them to be a propeller where, they could actually push me forward and build on my confidence, never feel that there is a moment where I'm not worth myself. And that I felt was important, even to give them my love. If you grow up with that regret that you can't give your children enough time because they're taking away from your work, it's vice versa. You can't love your children as much unless you see them participate in that journey of responsibility. But balancing is a really difficult task. I barely manage it even now.
But I love this thought that if I need to love my kids, I need to first love myself. And if I love myself, then I need to look into the mirror and see myself as someone who I wanted to be always. And I think that is commendable in itself, because most women, and this is not just in India but across the globe, when they become mothers, most of the times you feel that, okay, now I need to take a break, which is fine. One can take a sabbatical, but the important aspect is that how do you bounce back? And yes, definitely balancing, I think, that perfect balance never arises. You got to prioritize that what is important at which stage in life. And being a young mother, when your career is just starting, I'm sure there were huge challenges. But I'm so glad to hear that, you stood by, you continued to enhance your skills, you worked, and most importantly, your spouse stood by you.
Indeed.
And let me tell all the viewers who are watching us on Facebook and YouTube that her husband is also a lawyer. So imagine two lawyers together and, trying to manage their kids, their work, traveling overseas, and above all of this, pursuing your passion. But I'm going to bring the passion a little later. I need to talk a little more to Rohini. Rohini as a mom. Rohini, three kids, different age group, right? A teenager and an early year child. Early as in not very like a toddler, but, in grade second, third. Different emotions they go through, different challenges they go through. You have a, you have girl, you have a boy also. And how do you tackle that? you know Talking to a teenager vis-a-vis talking to a 8-year old vis-a-vis a 15-year-old, it's a generation in itself, right? Talking to a girl, talking to a boy, again, is a very different way of dealing with it. How does Rohini come there? Is the Rohini the lawyer there settling the differences, or how does Rohini deal with that?
No, I think I prefer to keep law out of the homeroom. It's better at the courtroom. But you end up, I think that's your default programming, Ekta. I feel you're absolutely right. It's a completely different ball game. And I'm learning every single day. I remember I had to go through parent classes. I've literally subscribed to a million workshops to unlearn the parenting that I had exposure to and relearn, what this generation requires. Because I figured that there's a huge gap in what we see, from our childhood recordings and what this generation is all about. There's a huge gap. They're not disciplinarians like we were. They don't respond to a lot of scolding or, definitely not violence. And they respond more towards logical thinking and equalized treatment. So I actually had to unlearn because I was used to a lot of different styles of parenting. And you know what style I'm talking about. We're all belonging to the same era. So I had to relearn a lot of those concepts. And you're right. When I deal with my teenager, I figured that I can't have a standard formula as a mother. So I have to constantly change hats and constantly change roles and constantly change the medium through which I communicate. So I've literally used everything from music to rock to punk to art to anything that really sells to drive down the logic and not get into the rebellious framework of mind. But and the other thing is the personalities of the children are completely different. It's not just a genderization, or it's not just their age groups, but they're completely different people. You take time as a parent to realize that my second daughter is very different from the first. She's fiercely independent. She has lesser needs. In fact, she doesn't like to be helped. And the first one was a very dependent child. So I'm used to raising her. So when my younger one came to grade 6, and I figured that she's refusing my help, that itself was learning for me, because as a mother, you feel useless suddenly. That your child doesn't need you. And what is this? I've spent so much time and investment. And now I have to unlearn the first one's programming to get the second one on board. And then you realize that my son is a completely different ballgame, because he's neither independent nor dependent. So he's in the middle. And so then you have to once again unlearn, throw away what you know about them and rework it. And it's a lot of communication. So with the one thing that I've always depended on for my parenting is active communication at home, where we do very small things, like I'm always by their side when I speak and I'm never opposite them. So that way they feel that I can connect at their level. It's just a gesture, but it's worked wonders in terms of having free communication. And even then, there are sibling relationships which are really stressful. There are so many fights which are so stressful, and you keep wondering, I had the three of them together to make sure that they were never alone. How come they're not grateful? Why are they fighting? But it happens. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a completely uphill journey, and I'm learning every single day. The only thing wise, I think, that I've taken as a decision is not to have a set formula, to go by instinct and to go by what their needs are rather than inflicting our needs. So I end up learning and unlearning my chains every day.
Wonderful. And I think that's the way parenting works. There is no set formula. What works for you may not work for me, even if we have the same age kids. Every child is unique, every mother is unique. But, I like this gesture that you extend to your kids. And that's something that I'm going to take back, one takeaway from our conversation today, that while you're speaking to your child, don't sit opposite, sit with them. I think that is something that is a big learning for me, because I'm very junior when it comes to being a mom. I just have a 6 year old, but that's definitely a learning. And I think, all these conversations that we do here at Motherhood Club, I have a vested interest, because I get to learn so much from other parents, other moms and fathers, that how are they dealing with their children who are very unique. And they're also constantly learning and unlearning, and so are we. In fact, I remember one of the moms saying that my biggest teacher is my child, because they are telling me as to how do I need to actually work alongside them. And I firmly believe that when we teach our kids, it's the moment that they learn, they understand. But the moment we start mentoring them, and there is a reverse mentoring from their side, I think that's where the game changes. It becomes the game changer.
Absolutely.
So, no set parenting style that Rohini has. But before we go ahead, let me thank everyone who has joined us hearing this amazing conversation with Rohini Roy, an international lawyer, a theater artist, a pianist, a dancer, and a lot more. But above all, and most importantly, a mom and a woman. So, Rohini, we all carry baggages of our past. And as you also mentioned, that there is a lot of unlearning that you did, of the parenting that you were exposed to. I got it. Which kind of parenting are we really talking about? Because, our generation was like,
Absolutely.
and one here and there and all that. But, there must be something that you carry it with you as a good legacy when you are engaging with your kids. And the reason that I'm constantly coming back to this is because that's what makes us, a mother is someone who is actually shaping her kids, inculcating the values. And while we unlearn a lot of things, but there is something that is very good about our parents' parenting, that we feel that this needs to be taken forward or inculcated in our kids. Anything that you recollect or you would want to involve in your parenting?
Again, this question, it makes me very, very humbled, because I've spent a long time in my life really analyzing what went wrong with childhood. What were the failures, what were the misses, and I've spent so much time being the opposite of what I received, just to be able to make sure that they weren't exposed to the same stimulus that I was, just to shield them from the feelings that I felt. That very often you forget that there are things which you look back and you see that you couldn't have learned this from the world at large. So thank you for reminding me of that. I think this is the first time in your show that I've actually remembered something of that sort. But yes, I think that the fact that being a woman, there is no limit to what you can achieve, even though you live in a society where your genderic roles want you to be able to handle more than your work, right? Your husband is not expected to handle anything beyond, let's say, professional employment. At least that's the majority story. But as a woman, you're expected to handle the kitchen, the family's health, your children's education, your own work. Your own work is just a sort of frill on the cake. But the ability to break through that stereotype, and the ability to actually handle and sustain all of that whilst being good in each sphere, and being fiercely independent, having a place in your family, which is not just about performing a role, where you're not restricted to just performing a function, but you're doing multiple things with equal amounts of grace. I think that I have picked up from my mother. Again, being a single parent, it comes with its own challenges. But if you see the stimulus that I've been exposed to, for my entire life, I've seen a woman do everything for the house, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's financial, And yes, there are misses, because not everyone is able to handle it with an equal amount of perfection across domains. But that feeling early on, it builds into your child's system and psyche that I am bigger than just being, a role doer of a task. That I can do six tasks together and multitask and actually perform wonderfully. That's also an ethic, and I see that in my eldest one, who's now at that age. She's a fresh teenager. She's about 14, and she looks at the world in that fashion. She says she has those ideals already set in. When I ask her, what's your definition of an ideal woman, she will not say that an ideal woman is someone who can't pursue her passions. For her, an ideal woman is someone who will have children, who will have a career, who will have multiple functions across the family, even if it is just the emotional well-being of the family. That in itself is a huge task. So I think that is something, we tacitly impression it on our children's minds by role modeling. And for me as well, one thing that's the most dominant strain of the way I grew up is looking at a mother who performed all of those functions. So for me, she was a family in her whole self. And whether I want it or not, I am doing very similar things, maybe in a much more complexified fashion, but across many different domains, perhaps. But I am doing that, and I'm trying to inculcate that sentiment in my children as well. So that's one of the positive sides, and thank you for reminding me of that.
Wonderful. So I think, a mom who is very strong, you don't expect anything less than having a stronger child. And I think that's carrying on from legacy to legacy, from your mom to you to your daughters. And I'm sure as the younger one grows up, you will see another stronger woman. And I think kids generally see, observe, and learn more than what you actually give them in writing or in a textbook. So what your elder one, who's maturing and she's already 14, is actually seeing you, who is managing all of that she thinks is an ideal woman. So somewhere you and your mom become role models. Of course, our kids only see the good side of it because that's what we expose them to, and not the hardships that one goes through. So that leads me to another point. Do you share your hardships with your kids? Do you tell them as to how your growing years were in terms of bringing in that humility and humbleness? Because you are an accomplished lawyer, and with all these credits that you have and all that you have accomplished personally and professionally, in our kind of times, we as parents are more evolved as compared to our parents. We are more exposed, we are more visible, and thanks to social media our work goes tom-tomming at all over the places. So how does the humility come in the kids?
I think that's this is something we're still working towards, and I worry about it every day. Not just because of what you mentioned, but also because our kids are exposed to so much more, and they have it so easy. For me, I didn't have these things, come very easily. So even for attention, I had to actually try. But for my children, they don't have to try because they have a mother who's already working on that mode where I was deprived of it and they shouldn't be deprived of it. And there is a flip side to that equation. While you're being a great parent, you are running the risk of a child taking you for granted. And this is something I fight it intrinsically. I can see, little hints of that coming in and going. But it's something to worry about, because then the question arises that while you're being a perfect parent, are you robbing them of the stimulus that they would have got as a result of life's vagaries and circumstances to actually develop themselves? So there's a healthy debate possible on that. And that's, I think, my biggest challenge is around that sphere, because I carry a huge baggage from the kind of childhood stimuluses that I've had. And I'm trying to prevent that actively and consciously every second of my life. So I will show up to every single show, a little, performance on stage, a sports event, or even where my child is not actively participating, but a parent has been called. I will show up just to tell them that, look, I'm here for you. But that actually robs them of the stimulus of knowing what it takes for me to take away from my work and, give that extra bit in. So this is something we're constantly thinking about, whether they are humble, whether that humility is built in. I don't know, but you asked me, do you share your hardships? Again, a very, very important part of my parenting, or I think any parenting, is unless we share our hardships with our children, these are children who are already entitled. So if you don't share hardships, you will not build that stimulus at all. So unless because they're constantly role modeling not just your good things, but also how you handle problems. They're constantly looking and judging that, okay, if my mother or father handles a problem in this way, this is what I should do. So I'll give you an example. I have taught them to stand up for themselves, even in a little situation, even if it is in school or it's a class teacher who assigns a test without teaching a particular syllabus. Always actively encouraging them to speak for themselves and to stand up for themselves so that their self-worth remains. Now, this is something, it's easier said than done. A child will always be scared of the other side being a teacher. But I remember I have shown them, there have been times when I've been, mistreated at work. And I have actually come and discussed it, that, I felt that I deserved that promotion. I felt that I deserved this accolade. And this is how politically it was construed in a way that I was deprived of it. And then they have seen me cry, they've seen me laugh, and then they've seen me get up from that fall and rebuild myself together to be able to overcome, this dangerous stimulus. So then I remember asking them that, what do you think is failure? And I was very impressed with the answer that my 10-year-old gave me. And I'll repeat that for you. She said to me, maybe it's not the falling down. Failure is not the falling down, but it is not being able to get up from the fall and trying to rise back on your steps again. Now, this is something she derives from the stimulus that she's exposed to. So I think it's so important that we tell them about what we go through on our daily lives, because we make it too simple for them. There's nothing that you need to do. Everything will be taken care of. The car will come and pick you up from the bus stop. whenever you have an activity, we will go, we'll pay the money. They don't have to worry, they don't have to fend for themselves. So the only learning way is to actually share the hardship and come to their own definition of how we handle it. Sorry, that was a really long answer. Too
No, but
excited.
absolutely. It makes so much of sense that, we actually talk to our kids about things that happen at work, what we've been through. Again, life is all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I love the way your daughter explains failure. Maybe you can share what I say about being failing, or, about fail is forward action, inward learning. You know,
Lovely.
yeah, you fail, that's when you learn, and that's when you move ahead. And if I bring in my financial hat, then I say financially aware in life. So, fail has a very different connotation for me also. So I guess, your daughter is on the right track.
It's
She's
amazing.
definitely going to be one empowered woman. So let me read a few comments. So this is OSM Bollywood from YouTube saying, thanks a ton, Rohini and Ekta, for this initiative. Keep it up and waiting for more. Shweta Sundar is saying that what a versatile personality you are. And Manjulata is sharing that you're a wonderful lady and the life of working ladies are always challenging. Absolutely right. So Manju is also a teacher and she does a lot of work to educate kids. So Rohini, we've spoken about you as a young girl when you were growing up, as a mother, this young girl, a daughter, and a mother is a woman of today who is definitely excelling at her workplace, but finds time for her passion, be it music, be it playing the piano, theater, dance. Now, out of all these pursuits that you have, which is your favorite?
Oh, I I
Difficult one.
yeah, this is very difficult and unfair because I really love all those facets of it. I love them more than what I do actually. So can't pick one.
One. Yeah, I can understand that. So, for everyone who's watching us, this woman sitting here plays the piano amazingly well. And if I tell you all the places that she has played, I'm sure a few of us is going to fall off the chair. So I'm not going to share that because that I think I have shared in her profile. And I'm going to let her share that actually. But before she does that, you think, Rohini, we could have a glimpse of each of your passion, be it theater, be it music, or playing the piano? Because for everyone, the lady sitting here who's speaking to you and you all feel that has an accent, and as she also mentioned that she has an accented, but when she comes into her theater mode, you will see the turnaround. So Rohini, let's start with theater. Let's give us a glimpse of Rohini the actress.
How do I give you a glimpse of me, the actress? Let's see.
Any dialogue where we see you in action with expressions and emotions and delivery of the dialogue.
All right. Let's pick one from our recent play. So let's see. I remember. Yeah, I remember a little bit of the dialogue. So I was playing Bebe in a very Punjabi setting in a very Punjabi play, written and directed by a very very famous director, and she was very categorical that we had to play and be the part. So I couldn't be a baby with an international accent. And so I had to do a lot of Pammi Auntie video tutorial training to get my Punjabi in shape. And I barely understood the language. So I remember there was this dialogue, from my script where it said, the lady's talking about how she regrets getting married to, her best friend's brother. In fact, my best friend was actually Ekta, playing Mataji. So she's regretting how many years have gone into this marriage, and yet she has no recognition. So she says, "Oh, कर ले विआह मेरे वीर नाल, कर ले विआह रोज कहती होती है मैंने तो ना इतने साल गुजारे हैं जी, मैंने इस वीर दी जी बीवी बनकर, अब मैंने तो प्रेसिडेंट दी अवार्ड मिलना चाहिए." So I remember the dialogue very fondly because it's taken us a lot of rehearsing that accent, the twang of the Punjabis, to get it. But it was one of the most enjoyable moments that I've had on stage live.
Absolutely. And I must add here that when we were being auditioned for this play, for the roles that we would get, And Rohini was talking in her usual self, the way she's talking here. And when she it was her turn to audition, the sudden switch from that accented way of speaking to that typical Punjabi tone, it was mind blowing, and we were all taken aback that what was this? Where did this come from? So it was absolutely amazing. And yes, Ela, thank you for saying that she says that she has seen you and me doing that power pack roles. And there is another comment that has come that I would like to read. That's from Manju Kuller. Your mother really instilled in you, whatever you do it to perfection with your 100%, and you have been doing it. And this is Ranjana Majumdarji saying, very nice application of your skills. So Ranjanaji is also a Bengali and sings amazingly well. Maybe,
Oh,
one
yeah.
day we could have all of you come together and have a musical evening here. So that was a glimpse of theater that Rohini is into, and she loves to act. Music. Rohini, before I request you to perhaps sing a song and play the piano for us, you have been using music to engage with kids who are on the autism spectrum, right? If you could share a little bit about that, because we have done a couple of conversations here with some parents and some people who work extensively for autistic kids. So, how are you using music to help them? What exactly is done in that? And a little more about the other social initiatives that you're involved in.
So I think that autism is, I'm pretty sure I don't need to explain what autism is as a disorder, but essentially it's a behavioral communicational gap. And of course, needless to say, music has been very close to my own heart. So it started off when I was teaching, and I came across these two brothers who were autistic. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out that when you have a 6-year-old autistic child, how do you get across reading of music, and especially Western classical music, which is a very serious discipline. There's a lot of theory involved, understanding rhythms, beat structures, mathematical equations. I couldn't really figure out how to do that. And then I noticed, so I struggled for about 6 or 7 months with those children, and I couldn't come up with anything constructive. They would revolt, and they have a very quick mood switches, autistic children. So it's difficult to maneuver when you have a 1 hour lesson and you're seeing that the child can get violent and he can start throwing things, throwing books at you, lamps at you. It's difficult to navigate, your way through that as a teacher. So I really started thinking, and I'm not a quitter by nature. So I really wanted to come up with a way where I can get across to him in his language. I figured that the language is the barrier because they don't respond to English or Hindi stimuli. So I started playing with different genres of music. And one day I figured that this child, whenever I play Mozart, which is, an Austrian composer from the classical era, who was very playful music. In fact, you wanted me to show and demonstrate. So what I'll do is I'll try and show you what I did with that child to develop his, moods. I'll show it live on the piano if possible. But it's really amazing. It was very liberating, the results of that little experiment, because I found that every time I played that piece, it was just that one piece, he would calm down like a little leaf, and he would just sit still, not respond to anything. He would forget violent behavior and just calm down. He was totally opposite to what his parents knew of him. So all of us started noticing this. So that's when I really started working. And then I figured that music is something that is there within your belly when you're pregnant with the child. The child responds not to words in your pregnancy. They respond to preterm babies, respond to stimulus of sound, which is not necessarily verbal communication. It can be. So I remember when I was pregnant with my first, she would always kick to beats of music. And it always came whenever I played something. So they respond, even the mother's voice. The child doesn't understand language. They're actually understanding tone and intonation and pitch. So if I'm shouting, the child is able to understand that there is a stressful moment, and how the body connects to that stress. And the child will sort of mirror symptoms of stress. The heartbeats will go up. in the fetal meters, things like that. So that connection has always been there from birth, from before birth, actually. So all we are doing is taking that stimulus of music without the need for language and putting it through someone who has the same problem after being born, that they can't respond to verbal stimulus. So essentially, it's just building that interaction through a different platform without the necessity and barrier or limitation of language or vocabulary, because not everyone responds to the same things. So we are changing the stimulus. That's all it is. And it shows brilliant results in terms of social behavior. It even helps them. So I took it in larger scale after that, and I tried developing it with children who belong to this community, who are otherwise having problems with social interaction, understanding commands, or even understanding their needs. Actually, they were incapable of expressing it, communication challenges. And it worked like magic, because listening to music within music therapy also sort of involves an interactive process, that often includes selecting music that is meaningful for that person.
Rohini,
Example.
one
Yeah.
second. Somebody's at the door. I'll just check and come
Yeah,
to. There's
sure.
nobody home. Carry on talking. I'll join you back in a second.
Sure. So just continuing with where I left off. Actually, I don't even know where I left off. Yeah, I was talking about what those connections are. So listening to music in music therapy, actually, we select, specific samples of music which relates to the stress or the concern or the deficiency that a person is facing in his or her life. So it's not just that I select a random sample and play it and expect it to act as therapy. A very important part of that therapy is selecting the verbal and behavioral challenges or the situations which really need sort of redressal. And so part of the game is actually finding the right stimulus. A violent type of music piece may not work well for a child who doesn't have that need behaviorally. So for somebody who's striving for emotional connect, we wouldn't use things which are very less emotional and a beat dominated music with lots of rhythms and beats. I wouldn't use rock or punk or metal for a child who's not emotionally stressed. So a lot of it depends on what structure you're selecting, and the results are, it's amazing. So before we go on, let me demonstrate this to you with a little piece that I used for this boy. But Ekta, I'll have to very briefly go off this video and turn on from another device so that
Sure.
you can see it
Yep.
now. Yeah, so
Yep.
just give me a minute.
Yes. So while Rohini connects to her other instrument so that we can see her play the piano, I think it's amazing to know about a woman who is excelling in her profession, pursuing her passion, managing her kids, her family, and is trying to deal with learning and unlearning, especially when you have a legacy, you have a past, a childhood that you experienced, which was not so pleasant, feeling lonely, and here trying to build that beautiful empire of your own, using music to connect with kids who are on the spectrum. And I also believe that music is therapeutic. Rohini is using it for kids who are on the spectrum, but I have seen it firsthand of someone I know who has used music to bounce back from a stroke. So music actually has music actually has the power to heal you, right? And I think Rohini is quite ready.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
I can hear you,
Except
but
that
I
you're
cannot
looking at
see
me
you
to the side.
properly.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly turn it around for you. Just one
Yeah.
second.
Yes. And Rima is saying that this is another side of you, Rohini. Music therapy, wow, you truly are not just multi talented, but you actually bring your talent to such good use in action. Yes, indeed, Rima, thank you for joining in. And, I'm so glad that everybody who's here hearing you is appreciating all that you do for yourself, for your kids, and for people at large. And I think that is what Rohini is, who I lovingly still call her Bebe from her play, because that's the character she played. And she and I, like I said, had a very strong chemistry. And I think that chemistry has led us to be friends, to know more about each other, to understand each other. And here we are today talking to each other. So, for everyone, I think, there are a lot of learning that we take back. And let me just share that while Rohini is getting ready to play the piano. Women do go through changes in life, they do carry a lot of baggage as a child, as a daughter, as a mother, as a wife. But I think what is important is that, are we constantly going to be cribbing about it, or are we going to do something about it? Are we going to take our learning and bounce back and achieve all that we wish to, either for ourselves or our family? I think that is what is a big takeaway for all of us today. We shouldn't quit. We are not meant to quit. We can fail, but as Rohini's daughter said, we only fail when we fall down and we forget to get up. But if we are getting up, then that's just an interim phase that is reminding you that, hey, you know what? You need to do a little bit more. You need to push yourself a little bit more to achieve that all that you have dreamt of. Learn, unlearn a lot along with your kids, as they are our greatest teachers, and help them take a stand for themselves. So, lots to learn from Rohini, and I think she's ready. Maybe you can flip the camera. Yeah, perfect. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love this piece that Rohini is going to play. Again, yes, Ila is saying that she's fortunate to have seen Rohini play the piano as well. So, for all of you, let's welcome Rohini once again to play the piano and understand that how music helps us heal ourselves. Unmute yourself, Rohini.
Except that Rohini doesn't know how to somehow get the camera to invert itself. This is so embarrassing, but anyway, I will
There
figure it
will be
out.
a button which says turn around on the phone. It will
Mothers
like
who are not
two reverse
mothers who are not
arrows.
good. So I need to go to settings, Ekta.
No, it would be on the camera itself. You would see there'll be two arrows on the bottom right. It's okay.
Nope.
No?
Nope. So I think what I'm going to do is probably keep it this way. Can you
Oh,
see the
yeah,
piano?
I can see the piano.
You can. Okay. So I think
Yes.
this should do it. Can you see it still,
All right.
Ekta?
Yes, I can see it.
Lovely. All right. So um, I was talking about. You can hear me still, right?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see the piano, and I can have a glimpse of you too.
Lovely. So I was talking about the child who we were dealing with autistic tendencies. And I figured somewhere down the line that, he has a problem responding to emotion. And emotion and music, it's probably music is the only stimulus that can give you that kind of emotion when you really look. So I chose this piece, which is actually The Dream of Love. It's written by a romantic composer called Franz Liszt, a very important French impressionist composer of that time. If you hear the piece, you will feel why we chose that to address his emotional stimulus. I won't play the whole thing, it's a long one, but I'll play a little aspect of it so that it gives you a glimpse. But see if you can feel that connect for me.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. I'm not playing the entire thing, but if you see that this actually has, a very deeply emotional flavor, Now compare that to something like, I don't know, or something like this very, very playful indeed. So we would select that kind of piece for somebody who's having difficulty calming down, and has that play stimulus very, very deeply imbibed. But that's not quite so for the romantic type of pieces. Then there are violent pieces, for children who have behavioral needs that translate into violence. So I'll give you a small excerpt, and I promise you that'll be the last one. Then we'll go back to
No, no,
talking.
I'm loving it.
All right. So this is called the minute balls. Essentially, this was designed to be played in literally 1 minute. So it tests restless children, the restless stimuli in the mind, and it gives them that challenge, So it starts something like. See, this is more of a violent stream of action. So all I'm trying to say is that really, for music to be successful as a therapy, I think that we need to understand the behavioral needs of a child. And then it becomes successful, as a therapy. And it's been associated so long, the rationale for use of music therapy for individuals and, sort of with communication disorders, it's actually based on findings of infancy. Infancy researchers have always described dialogues between mothers and their infants using musical terms. When describing tonal qualities, researchers use terms like pitch, timbre, tone, movement. And when describing temporal qualities, like the temperament ones, they always speak of pulse, tempo, rhythm, timing, that describes the sensitivity of very young infants to the rhythmic and melodic dimensions of maternal speech. There we don't use music, but they're always listening to your voice. So that maternal speech and to its emotional tone, as demonstrating that we are born ready to engage with the communicative musicality of conversation. And this premise allows music to act as an effective medium for engaging in non-verbal social exchange for children and adults with ASD. So necessary communicative behaviors such as joint attention, or I don't know, I mean, what are the kinds? Eye contact, taking to, turn taking. This is what they
Mm,
typically struggle with. So characteristic events, these are shared with active music making, and therefore inherent components of this therapy, it really, really produces excellent results. To stimulate communication, it's unimaginable how music therapy really works with improvisational music making. And we actually make them improvise. We make them do musical structures, learn to play around, with the predictability of music. And it brings them comfort, that predictability. So this is more about what we do in autism and music. It's a big subject actually, but hopefully this is something which is yet to develop into the kind of flavor that we really want it to. So I'm going to again leave you for one quick second and
yeah,
join back on my original audio.
yeah,
All right, sorry for that.
no worries. So, wow, wow, and wow. That amazing piece of music that Rohini displayed for all of us. Different kinds. Some were very soothing, some was like really confusing for me. And I think music definitely has a therapeutic impact on each one of us. Rohini, as you mentioned, and how effectively you've used it with those kids, and the knowledge that you have about it. But before I continue with what I felt, let me share a few comments. Music therapy is good and useful for every living thing, even plants besides humans, says Ranjana ji. And she's very keen to meet you, let me tell you that. Monica is saying, love the way your hands move over the piano keys delicately.
Okay.
Ranjana ji also said the last tune, this was, the not the last, but the one before last. Tunes are very soothing and at the same time the foot tapping. So, and very interesting, says Tapasya. So now I think, like I was sharing, that I have seen an aunt of mine who, because of a stroke, lost her speech. But since she was always into music, so she restarted her music learning, and whenever she sang, or whenever she sings rather, the speech is very clear as compared to when she speaks. So I think that is the power of music, the way it heals you, emotionally, and it connects you. I think that's the healing power, and I'm so glad that you're doing this for the kids who are on the spectrum. Is there anything else that you do? That you do so much, and what I like is that not only are you into it, but you have the knowledge. You take out time to read about it, to understand. You've built the skill and you're using it for the betterment of, I'm sure, self as well as for people around you. So what more is there in that Pandora box?
No,
Did I
nothing.
miss out something?
I think that I do it more for myself, really, because, I've never been able to live without a purpose, even at my workspace. I'm constantly looking for a meaningful value addition of myself. And if you don't value add, you feel like a very useless, piece of architecture who's just earned a degree for nothing. So it's always been, and this is something, it's a continuous struggle. Remember, Ekta, I was telling you that we don't always have the same stimulus. This is where I struggle with my daughters. Now, they don't seem to have to share that streak of socialism that we do, or socialism is the wrong word, but the fact that you want to give back more to the society than what it has given you. They don't yet see that vision, and they're always wondering why. But I think it's a lot of circumstances that have shaped me into the person I am, because I was used to feeling useless probably all alone. And to make yourself purposeful, you end up being more involved in societal behavior. So to feel that involvement, I think I got myself into a lot of this initially. Now it's become a passion. That's a different issue. But this is something I try. I do it more for myself, to feel purposeful every minute.
Wonderful. And I think it starts from there. When you start doing it for self, you automatically want to also give it. You want to share it because you know what the impact of it. And I'm sure music would have helped you also in your
Absolutely.
growing years. And
Coping
then
emotionally.
so it's not just music, it's not just piano. She's also a trained Bharatnatyam dancer. She also sings. So Rohini, it would be unfair if we don't get to have a glimpse
No,
of your singing. Little
no.
bit. No?
No, I actually am suffering from amnesia as to what to sing for you, and that's quite difficult. So we'll leave the singing for another time, hopefully.
All right, perfect. I'll take it. You've been very nice, and you've been answering all my questions with your heart and soul into it. What else should I ask you? I think in every answer of yours, there is a message, there is a learning, and normally we ask our guests that what is that, what are the learnings that you have, or what is the kind of advice that you'd like to give the fellow parents? But there is one that is coming your way. Is that the person says that her takeaway would be, what's my value addition? I think every day we should ask ourselves. Absolutely right, the person. I think if the fact that we are constantly learning or are making that effort to learn, we are alive. We are actually living and not existing. And I
Very,
think
very.
I experienced it myself when I went back on stage after almost 2 decades. That feeling that I was rejuvenated. I suddenly felt more alive. That this was something that I was missing. And it wasn't about what role you played or how long you were on stage, but you were on stage and pursuing a passion. And I followed it up with the dance competition. I'm not a great dancer, but I said, for the fun of it, for to relive all that I wished to, or all that I did during my heydays, college days and school days, let's just get out of the rut and do something. And I think it's commendable, Rohini, all that you're doing.
That's
Rohini
well.
also, like many mothers, said, I don't think my journey is inspirational. And our journey is not made inspirational by the awards that we win, by the degrees that we have. I think it makes it inspirational when we are able to actually, one, understand ourselves, respect ourselves for that, and at the same time, the ones who are around us, who consider us to be the fulcrum. My husband always says that the lady of the house or the mother is the fulcrum who kind of gets everybody together and binds them. And I think that is a huge responsibility, and you are doing it with such grace. Kudos to you for doing that, Rohini, because I have seen you how you juggle your time for your work, for your travel, for your kids and everyone. So commendable. Hats off to you. Continue to do the great work. And
Thank
what else should I say? All the
you.
very best from the entire team at Motherhood Club. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for having me. I think this is only an extension, of what I call self-love. That the fact, if there's any message that we want to share amongst this parent community, is to be the best version of ourselves. I think we have to continuously invest more and more into self-love. That's something we don't do as women with so many diverse responsibilities. It is so difficult, and it's such a thankless act at times. Everyone will thank you for being good at your job because you get a salary and you get a certification and a promotion, but nobody thanks you for the softer skills that you contribute constantly. whether it's cooking a nutritious or a delicious meal for your children. And that is a tremendous act of love. Those who haven't got it, home cooked meals, know the value of it. Those who are not used to seeing a mother at home when they come back from school, so that they don't have to enter a locked house by opening the lock themselves, know the value of what stay at home parent is. And these are things which our society is trained not to reward in the way that we receive rewards for other things. So, in that context, if we don't take out time for self love and for pursuing what you're passionate about, what you're good at, I think that we'll raise a generation which is not fully complete because they are not yet trained to see that it's okay to invest time beyond just fulfilling duty. So this is one realization which has taken very long, and that actually starts from healthcare. Even our personal health is something that mothers always look beyond it. They look at priorities before health. And I think if we end up role modeling that behavior into the subconscious mind in some way or the other. So it's so important for us to take a step back and give yourselves a treat, like I am doing with Ekta, who is a marvelous host. Ekta, you could host me for one more. I've not had enough. But jokes apart, I think it's very important that our children see diversity, not only in society, but also within their parentage, so that they can emulate that diversity and know that it's absolutely all right to pursue a set of passions and grow. So thank you so much, Ekta. I have never enjoyed so much in my life. Hats off to you for being a woman of so many diverse personalities, whether it's finance or wealth management or social work or the Motherhood Club. You wear too many hats for comfort, but I really adore you for being who you are. And you're a very,
Thank
very
you.
strong woman. So, equally, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. And what you said, Rohini, thank you for saying that, because precisely why Motherhood Club was started 3 years back, in order to express gratitude to mothers who otherwise don't get it. Not that we need it, but as you said, that little bit of morale boosting that happens, that little bit of encouragement, and that acceptance of the fact that you're doing something different. After all, you're shaping the future of an entity altogether. So that gratitude, I felt that it was missing. And as they say, that the it's the wearer of the shoe who knows where the shoe pinches. So when I became a mother and spent a few years, like about I think 3.5 years, and realized this is all about, I mean, you enter the world of pee and poo, and nobody is really there to say thank you, and you're doing a lot more, and on. So we started this program, this initiative, Motherhood Club, and exactly what you said. So thank you for bringing this out. And
And for all
so
the
there is
change,
a
for
sorry.
all of them, for all of your viewers who are a little apprehensive of change in their lives, you must let them know that the devil was once an angel. So it's never too late. Thank you.
Absolutely. And let me just read out this one last message for you, which is from Rashmi Sanganeria from Jaipur. She's saying कि आप मंदाकिनी के जैसे लग रही हो.
Oh, I love her so much. That's tremendous. I must come on this show more often. Everybody, please vote.
You're please most welcome. And we all love music at Motherhood Club. And anytime if you feel that you can grace us with your singing and the piano, we'd love to have it. We keep doing these little programs, and
Absolutely.
on a pro bono basis. Let me mention that also, because
No problem.
we're a non-commercial platform.
It'll be an absolute pleasure. And I'll do one where I'm just singing and playing and not talking at all.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. So thank you so much, Rohini, for being
Thank you.
here, for taking out the time to share your journey, being so candid about it, and a lot of takeaways for each one of us. So once again, thank you so much for the entire team of Motherhood Club.
Thank you
We are
so much
grateful
for having me.
that you were
And
here.
thank you so much for the viewers. They're amazing. Lovely comments. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And ladies and gentlemen, before I sign off for today, gearing up for a special event on the 22nd of December at 5:30 p.m. at Motherhood Club Facebook group, where we will be felicitating Wonder Mom and Super Mom along with a poetic evening. Do join us to know who are these amazing moms with a twist. We will share all of that on 22nd December at 5:30 p.m. Till then, take care, stay safe. Signing off for today, this is Ekta Sehgal, founder and chief strategy officer, Motherhood Club. Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, and good night to everyone. Bye bye.